Hello, I am Padma Mallikarjunan. I am an enterprise support manager at AWS, and I am based out of Austin, Texas. Welcome to AWS Knowledge Center Live, where we share best practices and troubleshooting tips from AWS Support. Joining me today is Rob Iguereda from AWS. Can you give us a quick introduction, Rob?
Hi, yes. My name is Rob Higuerita, and I'm a technical account manager located in Austin, Texas as well. Happy to be here today to share some information about Trusted Advisor reports. Thanks, Beba.
Thank you, Rob. Everyone, today we will be introducing to you how you can visualize your AWS Trusted Advisor reports for your organization. We will specifically focus on AWS Athena, Glue, QuickSight, and build a demo using these services. Before we get into the details, a quick note to our attendees online. Please use the chat window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask your questions and share your thoughts throughout the episode. We look forward to hearing from you. Rob, can you walk us through what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we'll start in on our topic for today. And we're going to be covering how to visualize organizational trusted advisor reports. And this is kind of a nice solution that we're going to be showing. Before we get going into it, I want to just kind of cover some groundwork on what is AWS Trusted Advisor. So if you're not currently using Trusted Advisor or you haven't tried it yet, highly recommend you jump into the console and go in and look at it. Reason being is Trusted Advisor is a way for our customers to be able to make sure that they get the most value for their investment in their AWS account. It's going to scan your environment and run a set of checks in there to make sure that you're kind of adhering to AWS best practices. And that's going to be, like we see here on the screen, between security, fault tolerance, performance, cost, and those service quotas. And it's going to be able to give you a variety of different checks and information that is going to be able to help you to implement those things in your account. So a little bit more into what each one of these does. So said if you haven't used it, it will help you save money. We have a cost optimization checks in there, and these will give you recommendations that can potentially save you money by highlighting unused resources or opportunities in general to reduce your bill. And this may be low utilization EC2 instances, idle RDS databases, or just adding on things like reserved instances and savings plans to your account to help you bring down your AWS bill. We have performance in there as well. And that's going to make recommendations that can help improve the speed and responsiveness of your application. One of the opposite checks from the cost optimization is if you have an overutilized EC2 instance. And that just basically means if you're using 85% of your CPU, it's going to trigger a check just to make sure that in your environment, you're not, limiting the performance of your application by having an overused EC2 instance. And that might make you help the difference, by scaling up or scaling out your resources to accommodate for that. Security-wise, this is going to go in a very important one, help you identify the security in your environment where you might need to make fixes. And this could be just simply enabling MFA on your root account. We've kind of covered before on here as well as being one of those really important things to have implemented. And Trusted Advisor will help you to view that in your account to make sure that you can then implement that, kind of fundamental check that we recommend. Fault tolerance is going to make sure that you have your infrastructure in place where you have, say, for production databases, that you're using multi-AZ RDS. So if you use our relational database services, making sure that for your production clusters, you don't just have a single point of failure, and it'll make recommendations for you to deploy it, say, multi-AZ. Might even be just that you have EC2 instances that you're deploying in your account, and it'd be best if you spread those across the AZs. So that way you don't just take up one, and in case there's some kind of issue in that AZ, that you have resiliency throughout that as well. And then your service limits or service quotas are just going to be making sure that if you're in your environment and you're bumping up, say, against the number of VPCs you can have in your account or number of elastic IPs that you can have in your account, it's just going to let you know that you might need to action on those. And those come up in those Trusted Advisor check levels. And that's going to be giving you green that, hey, no problems are detected, right? You've followed through on your cost optimization. You've implemented best you can your performance and all the other areas. And there's nothing really to do. Yellow is going to say investigation recommended. This doesn't necessarily mean that there's an issue so much as it doesn't adhere to our best practices and it should just be taken a look at to see if there is potential for you to implement something where you can, make an improvement or change to your environment. Red action is one that we just highly recommend you action on. So that MFA on root that I was mentioning before, if you don't have that in your account, it's definitely one of those things that comes up that says red action recommended, because we really do strongly recommend that you have that in place. Just want to pause there real quick, Padma, and see if there's any questions so far on the content.
I did not see any questions on the chat window right now. I do have a question for you, Rob. Do all customers have access to Trusted Advisor reports?
Yes. So all customers, regardless of your service support level, have access to Trusted Advisor. There's just going to be a different number of checks that are available to you based on your support level. So our basic and developer customers essentially get access to a fewer checks, primarily focused around security and those service limits. So there'll be 6 checks for security, helping you just to identify things like that root MFA and some security group items. But then for our business and enterprise support customers, they get access to all 115 checks, I believe it is now, for Trusted Advisor. That lets you look into all of your cost optimization, security, performance, and all the pillars that I mentioned here. So regardless, yes, just going to change how many checks you get.
Thank you. And I had a question just pop up on our chat window. Thank you, RayDB222, for your question. The question is, can you talk about the differences between AWS well-architected, the program, and AWS Trusted Advisor, the service?
Yeah, so they kind of build off each other, right? The well-architected framework, or a well-architected review that we have available in the console, is a great way to review the pillars that they have in well-architected that do very closely align to what we have in Trusted Advisor. And that's because we want to make sure you're well-architected. That's kind of a review that you might do on a recurring basis, but not going to be something you might check weekly. So Trusted Advisor is going to be kind of an enablement mechanism for you to be able to continually look into your account and see, am I actually following up on things that I had in my well-architected review, whether it be in cost or security or in operations overall. So that's kind of the difference between the two. They complement each other, but are two completely separate things.
Got it. Complement each other, one as a program to proactively review, the other as a continuous mechanism to monitor your resources.
Yep.
I will also share links about both of these on the chat window. Thank you for that overview, Rob, and back to you.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to continue on through here. And so Trusted Advisor has multiple different ways that you can kind of track how your progress is going as far as addressing those things for cost or for performance. And that can be through your Trusted Advisor console. And I'll show you a few quick screenshots through what these look like. In the Trusted Advisor console, you'll get some information. We have the AWS Systems Manager Explorer, and that allows you to provide organization-wide single pane of glass view of the number of checks that you have in your environment. You could build something yourself programmatically via the AWS Support API using the command line interface or an SDK to kind of customize and build your own solution. Or you can leverage the solution that we're going to cover today in a little bit more depth that will help you to kind of take a lot of that programming side out of it and give you a little quicker, easier way to get this up and running without having to have a deep understanding into the services that Padma mentioned before, like Athena and Glue and Amazon QuickSights. So just real quickly, jumping in, this is what you're going to see in your traditional AWS Trusted Advisor dashboard. You're going to log in, go to Trusted Advisor as a service, and you're going to get this view. These checks are refreshed daily. You can refresh them faster than that if you want to go into the console and see. But this is going to be for a single account that you're looking at your environment. So that is one limit to the Trusted Advisor dashboard. But it's a great way to come in and really drill in and find details about each individual check. So that way you can see, specifically when it says root MFA, what's our recommendation? What's a way to implement that? Plus links to the actual documentation that will help you step through making that recommended change. And that's what's really helpful for the Trusted Advisor dashboard. We'll take a look at this organizational view as you see that we have here available. It doesn't give you the graphical interface that you have here, but it allows you to generate reports that you could then manipulate in Excel if you wanted to as a CSV or export it as a JSON to import somewhere else And that's where our solution today is going to take its information from as well. Any questions so far on that, Padma, just on that initial Trusted Advisor dashboard?
I don't have any questions on the chat window so far.
Okay.
Everyone, please feel free to post your questions here. Rob here is the expert, and we're here to answer questions for you. Before we move on, Rob, quick question for you. Can you talk about customizing Trusted Advisor checks for us?
Yes. So the checks are always going to run across your accounts, but say you're in here in the dashboard and you have an S3 bucket that is, made publicly available on purpose. It hosts a website. There's nothing really in front of it, and you've got it for some kind of static assets. It's going to show up in your report every single time that you run Trusted Advisor on that account. But there is the ability to exclude that check from being in your report every single time. So that way, when you come into the console, you'd go to security, you'd go to the actual area where you're going to be looking at all the security checks, and you'll find your individual item, like that S3 bucket, click on it and just say exclude and refresh. And that way, when you go back into the console, it's going to be excluded. Doesn't mean it's completely gone. You can actually view your excluded checks because over time, you're probably going to want to go back and make sure that those things should still be excluded and weren't just kind of forgotten about. So that is one thing to just kind of take away is when you're looking at the advisor information, you exclude things, make sure you go back and check those excluded items in the long run.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Rob. Over to you.
All right. Section option that we have for viewing our Trusted Advisor information is AWS Systems Manager Explorer. And this allows you to do two ways, single account view, or to build what we call an organizational data sync. And it will allow you to sync all the data from your accounts in a single AWS organization into this dashboard, where we can see here that we've got the different checks and how many are there. So we can see performance is 20, cost optimization 10, and we can kind of read through and see. And if we make progress in our accounts, we can just kind of come back through here and see maybe performance went down to 18. So it's a fairly new feature that's been released in Systems Manager. So go take a look at Systems Manager Explorer, because it also has some other really neat features to it to help you just kind of get an operational view of your AWS account, including things like consolidated kind of case viewing, or how many managed instances you have in there and how many unmanaged instances you have. So highly recommend taking a look at Systems Manager as well, the Explorer for Trusted Advisor, plus other resources. All right. Shifting forward, we're going to be looking at what today's solution looks like. And that's going to be using other AWS services to view Trusted Advisor reports. Padma's going to share you a link to this actual documentation. So if you want to follow up with it right after the episode, you can see the step through. Has very detailed instructions on what you need to do to get it deployed. But it doesn't require you, like I mentioned, to have a lot of experience with Glue and Athena and such in order to actually use it. But it will give you the ability, over a little bit of time of playing with QuickSights, to build a dashboard similar to what you see here, where we have checks broken down by account, so we can see overall, what account do I need to focus on the most, right? Sometimes that is the biggest challenge, is just identifying what account has my most risk. How am I going to kind of, especially if you have a large amount of accounts, how am I going to start addressing these? So building this view allows you to kind of see quickly, where do I need to spend some time? And then like for this dashboard that I built, just gives you a few numbers here, right? I like being able to see the data as numbers where I can just quickly check back and see when I refresh this, has 1,791 checks gone down, hopefully to, maybe it's just 1,700. It will take some time for you to get through each one of the checks and, help to remediate them. Some of them may just be there and be consistent. But the nice customizable, nature of this solution allows you to decide what you want to see. And put it into a dashboard view where you can easily come and check this and be able to, provide a dashboard to, say, your management of here's the progress that we've made so far. Before I move forward, just checking back in, Pat, I want to make sure that I'm not missing any questions or anything today.
No questions so far on the chat window.
All right.
Everyone, please feel free to post questions on the chat window. Back to you, Rob.
Yeah, definitely make sure to post your questions. Happy to answer them here today. All right. So what does this look like? It's going to leverage a few different services that we mentioned today, and it's going to deploy these services for the most part for you You will require a few steps of manual interaction in order to actually deploy the solution, but it starts with just leveraging Trusted Advisor and that organizational report that I'll show you how to create one in our demo here today. But that's going to be kind of the root of everything that starts this process. We'll upload that to an S3 bucket. And from that S3 bucket is where everything else magical is going to kind of happen behind the scenes, leveraging services like AWS Lambda, using Glue and Glue crawlers in order to kind of crawl that data we put in the S3 bucket. And then we're going to be able to use Athena. You could just use Athena outright and start querying against the data. But really, we're going to use AWS Athena as kind of a landing zone for our data. And then we'll pull that into Amazon QuickSights directly. So there are a few prerequisites that we need to have in place to get started. We mentioned before, if you want all the checks, you will need business or enterprise support. If you just wanted to start this with your regular account that just has basic or developer support, you definitely can. It's just going to have fewer checks in there for you to use. You're going to need an AWS account, an IAM user with administrator permissions in order to be able to deploy all the different pieces, components that we have. Because we do have to deploy, we have to be able to create an S3 bucket. We have to be able to create Athena. We have to be able to create our QuickSights dashboard. So you're going to need some permissions there. You're going to make sure that you have enabled your organization's view in Trusted Advisor. And I'll show you what that looks like as well in our demo today. And then we're going to use for today our US East North Virginia AWS region, so we can quickly set up AWS services and resources there. And then beforehand to deploying this, you're going to want to go into Amazon QuickSights and just create an account. You can use the standard. There's going to be two options that given there for you between standard and enterprise. Feel free to just stick with standard. Enterprise just gives you a few more benefits if you already have, kind of maybe some usage that you're doing in QuickSights already. You might have this set up, but allow you to kind of administer users in a typical way that you would in a large organization if you use the enterprise version. Before we jump into the demo, Padma, just checking back in again to make sure we don't have any questions.
No questions so far. Everyone, I have posted links to whatever we have been talking about. Please let us know if you have any further questions for us.
All right. Thanks. So I'm going to switch over really quickly here into our demo so that we can take a look at this kind of documentation and overall solution in place here. All right, so we can see we're going to be leveraging this documentation that's called using other AWS services to view Trusted Advisor reports. And this has kind of our detailed step through of what we kind of need to have for those prerequisites, and then how we're going to kind of use these different services to be able to visualize this data. So prerequisites there. One thing we need to do is create this report that we're going to need in order to be able to upload it to our Amazon S3 bucket, because primarily we're going to need this resources.json file that comes out of our Trusted Advisor organizational reports in order to give you this information, right? So we'll look to download that and have it. And then beforehand, we're just going to create an S3 bucket in place as well. So jumping over to the Trusted Advisor console here, we're going to go in and click on Trusted Advisor. And then we see our regular view that we have here, like I mentioned, that you can just go in for a single account view. But we need to jump into this organizational view here. And that's going to take us into where we can actually create our report. So we'll come into organizational view. It'll just take a second. I've created several reports before. So you'll see those listed here. You could go back and use this data for, going back and doing a historical check on progress. And upload your latest version for like your newest checks if you want to kind of do a comparison wise. I'm not going to use really any of these today except for the latest two, just to show you kind of a comparison of how to update the process in the long run of things. So to create a report, we're just going to come in and click Create Report. And then you really don't have to change anything for today's solution other than give it a name. So we're just going to name this report. Maybe it's just organizational view, right? And we're going to click Create. And that's going to just start the process of creating this report. And we'll see here that it's in processing state. Just means I just started it and just kicked it off. Now, after a few minutes of time, it's going to switch to success. And then we'll see that I've outputted this as a .json. And that's what we really need to have, again, to make sure that we can leverage this in the solution here, because as I mentioned before, we're going to need that resources.json. So once I have a report downloaded, I can kind of move forward into the rest of the solution. And you can, ahead of deploying this next part, the CloudFormation template, you can extract that organization report, find your resources.json. It may also have like a resources-0.json or like resources-0 and a resources-1. Go ahead and take all of those and upload them to your S3 bucket that you're going to be storing this in. Next portions we're going to need to do is download this zip file that's CloudFormation so that we can create a stack. So you're just going to download this to your local computer, go into the CloudFormation console, and you're going to choose to create a stack. I've also have some links that we're going to provide in the chat if you've never deployed a CloudFormation stack. It's pretty simple, but it always helps to have a little bit of instructions along the way. So we've included that documentation as well today, just so you make sure when you come here, you know what to choose in your console. Since we've downloaded it, we're going to choose the option to upload a template file. And then we're just going to go find where our file is located on my computer in order to upload it. So as you can see here, I have it stored in this folder and choose that YAML file. Once we click on that, the console is going to do a little validation, and then it's going to bring us into the next area here. Pretty simple here. You can name your stack whatever you want. Name it something that makes sense to you, of course, right? So for this case, since we're going to be using it to visualize Trusted Advisor, just going to choose something that gives it a name that when I go into the console, I know what it's actually deployed for. Others that might be in your account, you know, if it's a shared account at your organization, are going to know what that is and not hopefully delete your stack and get rid of your solution if they actually have a good label to it. So make sure to do that. Next, we're going to have to fill in our bucket name. So we're going to make sure that we put in what the name of our bucket is, not our folder. So this one I just named visual-ta-reports. And it's just to help me. Now, keep in mind, your bucket name is unique across all of S3. So you're not going to be able to use the same name that I chose here because, sorry, I have that bucket already. But you can choose, you know, anything that's going to help you. Again, just remember, you may be able to name it the same as your stack name if you name it something unique. And that's just going to help you down the road of making sure that, you know what's actually there. I left mine named folder 1. Just nice and simple. So in my visual TA reports bucket, I've got a folder 1, and that's what I'm going to use in order to deploy things. On this screen, if you want to do further, you can add tags. So if you wanted to add a name and give it another tag, especially if you use tagging in your environment, highly recommend that you do. Helps you to look over your environments and kind of understand who's using what and what the purpose is that it was deployed for. So if you're not already using tagging, definitely would recommend it. Just while I'm paused here, Padma, just want to double check and see if anyone has any questions so far about the steps that we're using to deploy this.
Hi, Rob. Yes, we do. Thank you for your question, Mondraemon357. So the question here is, can I run the Trusted Advisor manually at any time on demand, or does it only refresh automatically and I have to wait for the refresh time to complete?
No, so you can refresh it. It does have a limit to the amount of time in between the refreshes. It used to be always 24 hours. We've reduced that down to like 15 minutes now. So you could go in there and just refresh the checks if you wanted to get, refreshed data all the time in Trusted Advisor. You just have that small window that you have to wait between them.
Got it. Thank you, Rob. And everyone, I've been sharing links to recreate the demo, the one that Rob was showing for you right now. And I also posted a link there on AWS CloudFormation best practices. It goes into additional details on creating IAM policies to control your access and so on. Please feel free to continue posting your questions on the chat window so Rob can address them for you. Back to you, Rob.
Thanks, Pat. So just back to the screen here, not much else you really have to change at all. The tags are just optional add-on items. Permissions, if you didn't have an account that had admin rights, but you got assigned a role that had the permissions that you needed to run this CloudFormation template, you could input those permissions here. For today's purpose, my account has administrator permissions on the account, so it's okay to continue without entering anything else. There are some other options here for today that we really don't have to fill in. So we're going to just go ahead and skip forward. And this is going to be our review of everything that we've put in so far. So if I had added in tags, you would see tags populated, but we can see that I've specified the bucket name and my folder name that's going to be used in this CloudFormation stack when it gets deployed. And that just really tells the things like the different components like Glue and the Lambdas where I'm actually putting my resources that it should be checking for. So it's really important that you have this bucket and this folder created and your report in place before you finish the CloudFormation template, because otherwise it's going to finish and then you have to go back and create those things and remember what you put in your template. So if you build those and get those out of the way, just creating the folder and the bucket ahead of time, it'll be a little bit easier on you. We do have to scroll all the way down here and say, I acknowledge that AWS CloudFormation might create an IAM user. This is going to need to create some kind of linkage between to allow access to the Athena to the bucket and stuff. So you might see some IAM changes here just as a heads up. But we just click that and then we'll click Create Stack. So that's going to start the create process of our CloudFormation stack, and it's going to deploy some things for us. Now, this is going to take a little bit of time. So I already have one pre-deployed that has all the checks and stuff in progress and done so that we can continue on through here. So once your CloudFormation stack is actually deployed and completed, you should see this create complete show up here. And that create complete is going to allow you to know everything's good. If you run into issues with your actual deployment itself, you're going to be able to come into the events section and you're going to be able to see things that might say like delete, failed, rollback, is going to happen, and use those errors in the status responses in order to kind of troubleshoot. Maybe it's permission things that your account doesn't have access to create resources. One consideration be your account might have access to, but if you're in an organization and your organization has our service control policies in place, they might actually block you from doing a few things. So you may need to just work with your organization admins as well to make sure you have access to everything that you need. But you'll be able to see here all the create completes, hopefully. You'll be able to see the resources that are created. And this is where, like I said, it's nice. We don't have to manually set up our glue crawler. We don't have to set up our Athena table. We don't have to set our S3 notifications up that would notify the Lambda that we've put a new item into our S3 bucket that then triggers our glue crawler. All of that is taken care of for you by simply deploying this template. So took some overhead off of your plate to try and make it an easier solution for all users to be able to kind of jump in and at least get this far into deploying the solution. Just going to pause there again real quick, Padma, to see if there's any questions.
Yes, we do have one question on the chat window. The question here is from EVS Tef. And the question is, can you give us an example for using big data? I'm going to make an attempt to respond to that. I think you mean, are there any Trusted Advisor checks that monitor any of AWS big data solutions? In which case, there are a couple of checks. For example, you can monitor your underutilized Redshift node clusters using AWS Trusted Advisor. I assume if your question is related to giving an example of how customers are using AWS Big Data Solutions, I'll post a link there to a case study that we have with Nikkei, how they have used AWS Analytics Suite of services to eliminate the need for hardware procurement, and how AWS Analytics Solutions have accelerated their building their analytics tool using AWS when compared to their on-prem solutions, and how it shortened their timetable. They've used Amazon Kinesis, SQS, Amazon DynamoDB, QuickSight, and so on. And I'll post the link to the case study. Rob, anything else you want to add based on Big Data Trusted Advisor checks?
No, I think you covered it pretty well as far as making sure that if you have underutilized Redshift nodes that are out there, it will help you identify those. So, and I think the other stuff you'll be able to provide there in the links will be good. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you. And let me know if we did not address your question, EVS Steph, and happy to address it for you again. Back to you, Rob.
All right, thanks. So just overall, like I said, it's going to deploy a lot of different components for you here. So we'll see that we've got, our visual TA report, Lambda executor that's going to be created for us. Our S3 Lambda notification alert's going to be created for us. We've got a Trusted Advisor crawler that's out here that's going to be deployed for you. Your Athena table and database is going to be deployed for you. So a lot of things you don't have to do, thank goodness, in order to kind of quickly be able to get this set up. Longest you'll have to do is basically just wait for the CloudFormation template to deploy in order to get these different components kind of out there for you. So we'll see here, I've already created my bucket, created my folder. I've got my resources-0.json out here in my folder. Like I mentioned before, you might see in the documentation that it just says resources.json. Don't be concerned if you have a -0. It's really going to look for any of those .jsons you put in there into that folder to crawl that data using the crawlers and stuff here. So once you have them uploaded, everything else here will take advantage of that folder inside of your bucket. So speaking of the glue portion and such, if you haven't used glue before, just a really quick overview, we have tables that get created, and those tables allow us to be able to connect those into other services to use. And then the crawlers kind of crawl the initial data that we put into our S3 folder. And that allows us to build the structure or that table that we're going to use. So we can see here that we've got the crawler created, and it's looking specifically for this Visual TA Reports folder 1. And that's where we're going to have all of our files, right, that we decided when we deployed the CloudFormation stack. And now we know that anything I put in that folder, or that's where I'm basically going to have my information that's going to get crawled. So we have that, and our crawler goes, it runs, and it creates this folder, folder 1 table. And you'll see within this folder 1 table that it's basically designed a schema that has everything of all of our Trusted Advisor checks. So it's a really long list of checks that are in Trusted Advisor. And it's not only just the checks, but it's each component of those, whether it be account name, account ID, check name, specific check ID, the 14-day average of CPU utilization that helps us understand whether we have low or high CPU utilization on an instance. And this is all captured for you without you having to manually come in here and create this table and structure in order to be able to use. And so since we have that crawled and completed in our Glue deployment, that is set up then to create this Athena table and database. So we have this Athena CFN database that has a table called folder 1. And that folder 1 was created when our crawler crawled the JSON that we put up into that folder and automatically did this work for you. So as you can see here, I have just a really simple query that says select star from Athena CFN.folder 1 and just returns back everything that's in that table for us. You could structure your own queries in order to say, select star from Athena CFN folder where security group, or check name equals, security group or whatever check you wanted to do and just filter it here. You could export that data. You could manually start manipulating it in Excel, create your own charts there if you wanted to. But again, it's a little bit more work that you might not want to necessarily do. But it is also very helpful to be able to, from Athena, what I've done with mine before is create different views in Athena of just the individual check categories. So just for security, just for performance, just for fault tolerance, and then take those views and use them in QuickSights that we're going to see here shortly. Just pausing there real quickly, Padma. I just want to double check, see if we have any other questions before I jump into the visualization portion.
Right, Rob. Yes, we do have a couple of questions here in the chat window. So the first question is from Wesley Cam. So he's currently, or they are currently using Athena QuickSight to get more detailed data about their costs. Mm-hmm. So the question is there any plan to automate report creation similar to what we have for cost utilization reports?
So I would definitely recommend taking a look at, and I think we have some links to provide as well too, Padma, on our Kudos framework. And Kudos is a new workshop offering that we basically have that allows you to build cost and usage dashboards using your cost and usage reports into Athena and then layered on with QuickSights. It has some pre-built templates that go with it as well that will allow you to get that visualization. And the way that it does the same thing from cost and usage report where you put that bucket, it then crawls that data and refreshes when that gets refreshed daily. So you can basically have a really live dashboard that you can then use to analyze your cost and usage reports as well visually there. So we also, We also have some well-architected framework labs out there. So in the well-architected labs website that we'll post a link to as well, they have some visualization options for doing the same thing where you can look at your cost and usage reports visually through there. The nice thing with those in both the Kudos and the well-architected lab framework, it's step-by-step instructions again on how to deploy these and get them connected. So.
Got it. And I'll post the links to both Kudos and the well-architected review labs in just a second. I have the next question here from Mr. Builder 10. Welcome back. The question is, are all instance types included in the Trusted Advisor recommendations?
Assuming you mean between the differences of like A1s or infra type instances and stuff, it just looks at EC2 as a whole. So if it exists as an EC2 instance in your account, then you will get a Trusted Advisor recommendation. If it's in a managed service like your EKS control plane or any other one that has a control plane that those are abstracted from your account as instances, you won't see those located in Trusted Advisor since those compute resources don't actually live in your AWS account.
Got it. Thank you for that answer, Rob. And Mr. Builder 10, if this does not address your question, please let us know. And that's all the questions we have on the chat window. Back to you, Rob.
Thanks, Tana. All right. So like I mentioned, we've got our data to a point now where it's queryable. We could use this data to just generate reports of our own. We're going to go one step further in the solution. And this is where we'll have a few of those manual steps. So up till now, the most manual thing we've had to do is create a bucket in a folder and upload a file. And then the CloudFormation template took care of everything else. The nice thing about this being the last few steps is they are fairly simple. You're going to have to jump into QuickSight, and you're going to have to basically create an analysis and data set in order to connect your Athena to your QuickSight to be able to use it. If you haven't used Amazon QuickSight before, when you launch into the console, you're going to see these kind of deployed examples that you could just use to see what QuickSight look like as a dashboard. So you could just click on the sales pipeline analysis and you'd be able to see like kind of an example of what you might use in your organization to help you monitor sales. QuickSight's definitely used for more than just looking at cost and usage data, and for what we're going to use today of our Trusted Advisor reports. So definitely take a look at all the other options. We have some great things out there on the docs as well that will help you on leveraging Amazon QuickSight. We also have the steps that you need in order to actually create those data sets and such in QuickSight in the documentation. So we've taken care of all these query portions, and now we're going to get into the fun part, or the part that I like doing, is creating the dashboards in QuickSight. And that's just going to require a few steps where you're going to be able to follow through right here in the instructions, pretty much click by click on what you need to select. Really, you just give it a name of whatever you want. You're going to name it the same as the documentation, just call it Athena TA. You're just going to choose your folder 1 table as your kind of data set that you're going to connect. And then one key thing that you're going to do here, because it's a really small data set, we're just going to query it directly against the data and not load it into Spice. Spice is great for if you have a larger data set and you want to cache some of the information there in QuickSight for you to use. You can cache some of that information there. For this example, you can just use the direct query. And then we're going to scroll down here and you'll see that this is where you can get into your Amazon QuickSight and be able to, choose what affected account IDs and different things here that we're going to look at really quickly. So when we launch into QuickSight, after we've created the data sets and we go in to actually create our analysis, we get blank, right? Because it's a nice blank slate that you can choose as your business dictates what you want to check for, how you want to be able to visualize that, that's most useful to you. Like I showed in my example before, maybe you don't want all the accounts by just the check IDs. Maybe you want a little bit more granular. You want all the accounts and just all the check names. So by default, it's on autograph, and autograph just means whatever you select, it's going to kind of choose the best layout for this. So I just chose account name, just have one dimension to my choice. And so it just shows me a list or a chart here of each account that I have in this organization and how many checks are in that account that need to be addressed. Helpful maybe for an overall view, right? But not real granular and kind of figuring out what checks you need to dig in the most. Just because I have 600 checks in one account doesn't necessarily mean that that tells me where I need to start digging into my actual information. So say we choose check name as well as the account. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here because it's really small to start with because it's a lot of information. And that's the other nice thing is you can resize these and you can scale these so that you can make it a little bit easier to view. But this gives me a representation now of each one of my accounts and then all the check names that are in that account so that I can start to get kind of a better overall picture of where I need to start. Nice thing with QuickSights as well is all of these little side items that are listed here on the table. I can click on them and it will isolate it down to that specific check so that it will only show me across the accounts that check that I have highlighted. If I choose to switch ones to a different view and that doesn't have enough dimensions in order to build that view, it'll just tell you in QuickSights you need to add or remove fields, right? Just depending. And that's just because it may not be a useful way to actually give you a view from that. So you'll have to go through and kind of just look and see, okay, the dimension I'm trying to capture includes account name, check ID, plus a specific item in order to get that. So if you're new to QuickSights and you're just getting started with this, I suggest just starting off on Autograph and clicking through some different options that you think you might want to see and see how it visualizes it. It could output it in just a straight table, which I find really handy to couple with an overall view. For me, with one of my customers, I worked with kind of looking through their security groups. So we wanted to get an overall count of how many security groups we had to look at, but that just gave us an idea of like what our progress looked like. In order to actually get more granular into the information, we had to include a table below that said, here's the actual security group names. Here's the checks that they didn't pass and need additional information on, like having open ports to the world, just to review those, right? It may be necessary for you to have open ports to the world, especially if you're running a website on those, or you're running a public service where you're going to need those ports open. But this will just give you the ability to kind of start to build that view using QuickSights. Just going to pause really quick, 5 minutes. Just want to double check in and make sure there's no additional questions.
Yes, we do have one question here. Thank you again for your question, Wesley Cam. I think Wesley Cam here has tried out the Kudos workshop and he has a specific question on the details of the Kudos workshop. So it seems that it looks like we have to, with the Trusted Advisor, download and upload the report to go to the cost details workshop. And the question is that accurate? And is there any plan to automate or schedule the TA reports to create them and upload them to S3?
So right now, the only option is, yes, to manually download the Trusted Advisor reports and upload them. Unfortunately, I don't know what the plans are in the long run to be able to automate that. But right now, yes, manually is the option.
Got it. And thank you for trying out the Kudos workshop,
Yes.
Wesley Cam. Yes, please share your thoughts on how you're all using the Kudos workshop or the well-architected review or the Trusted Advisor reports currently in your organization. We want to hear your feedback. All right, back to you, Rob.
All right. So really, it's going to take some time just clicking through and playing in the QuickSights dashboard in order to kind of figure out what you want to look at and what you want to see. If you like, this horizontal bar chart, you can lock it in at that and say this view is going to include it. If you like the vertical bar chart, you can switch it. Like I mentioned, you can create circle graphs. You can create just tables that include inside there a lot of different variations. Like I said, if you get one of the dashboards that has a nice big number count to it, one thing you probably want to see that number go down over time. And so that's where you're going to have to refresh that report. So you're going to have to do that manual process of downloading the Trusted Advisor organization report and uploading it again. But it will help you to be able to kind of see all these checks and to see your progress overall through here, just depending on how you want to view things. So a lot of different options, as you can see here, in order to select what you want to view. Like I said, I always like looking at the security items because I think security is a really important one. So we could isolate down to account name and check ID, and we can see, again, and looking in this count, security is low on some of them and it's mid on the others, where our service limits is the one that has the most items to check. But we're going to want to eventually see that data kind of come down for security if we're working on specifically that, or if we want to address all our service limits, we're going to want to see that come down. And that's really where going through and refreshing the data is going to be helpful. I think I mentioned before, you can click on these and get an isolation, but say you want to change the color as well because you like different color on your graphs. You can select those individual colors and modify those. You can, once you create these dashboards, actually export the data from these dashboards to a CSV for the most part, and be able to then like send that over to someone to actually action on. So maybe you take the data, you build your visualization, you say service limits are where we're going to check. You can have another visualization that shows you a list of all the service limits that need to be addressed. And then you can actually export that data from QuickSight and be like, here, ops team, go fix all these service limits requests and get me my service quotas increased. Overall, lots of customization in the dashboard that you can do. It doesn't have to be a single view. Like the dashboard I showed originally, you could have a bar chart, a table, plus your circle graph in there. Lots that we can kind of do. Real quickly on updating the data itself, all you have to do is replace your resource-0.json or just this JSON file out here with your latest data version. So we can go into this folder that I have created. You can delete the existing one or just upload over it. I tend to like to delete it and then upload a new one. For this example here, I have two different dates. I have one from February 18th, and then I have one from March 9th that I created as a report. And so the data we've been looking at is for 2/19. I've done some work. Security says they've closed a lot of security groups. Ops has said they've raised some service quotas. And now we want to just actually get a visual representation of that we can show to leadership and say, here's our pretty dashboard. Take a look at it. This is the progress that we've made. Numbers have gone down 20% or whatever. So we'll just choose this resource.json. As soon as I click on upload and that completes, I'll show you here. Don't have to do anything, right? I'm just sitting in here, just finished uploading it. I'm going to go back to my Groove crawler. And as we can see already, just by uploading that file into S3, it has triggered the crawler to start actually crawling that data. That data is going to get crawled, refreshed into my Athena table that exists in Athena that was deployed during the solution. And then since the QuickSight's dashboard is actually linked to that Athena table as its data source, you're going to see that update over there as well. And that way, when you go back into your QuickSight's console and look at, or go into Athena and start to query again, you'll be able to see your updated numbers. So that's really all I have today for our demo, Padma. So I'll pause here and see if we have any questions about the overall solution before I kind of just go through a quick few things.
No questions so far about the overall solution. Why don't you take a few minutes to go over the common questions and any other tips you have for us?
Great, can do. So I'm going to switch over and share my other screen here in order to just give a few additional tips and information. All right, so just a couple common questions, and we kind of already got some of these in the chat, so that's great. One of them being, can I automate the report refresh? Kind of answered, you have to still manually do that refresh. Pretty quick and simple. And luckily, all you have to do is upload that new JSON file, and the rest is all triggered for you. One of the key things that's going to be really important is, can I share my dashboard with others? Be great for you to be able to look at it, right? But more than likely, you're going to have others that are going to want to view this and see the information. And the nice thing with QuickSight is you can do a couple different things. You can, by email, invite people to view your dashboard. If the same users are in the account that you're using, you could just say, share this report with all IAM users in my account, and that way everyone will be able to view it. And that's kind of where some of the additional items like the Enterprise Edition might come into a factor. If you're already using Active Directory and such in your environment, Enterprise allows you to kind of tie that in and continue to manage it through Active Directory. So one benefit there. What else can I use QuickSight to visualize? We also discussed as well, right? Cost and usage information is really handy. Cost Explorer is an amazing product that we have. Allows you to see all the spend data and everything. QuickSight's just another way to view that data in maybe a way that is, a little bit more customized to what you want to see. So definitely check it out for that. Obviously, the sales pipeline, other business analysis use cases and reporting are also other key factors that you can use Amazon QuickSight for as well. If you run into trouble with the solution, we've included a section at the bottom. So Padma provided the link to the actual solution. There's a little helpful documentation online at the bottom that will help you walk through things like, I'm not seeing the latest data in my report. Like when you create the report, you might have to go out there and just verify that it's the latest version. If you don't see numbers change and you know things actually changed, just go through the documentation here, and it will help you to be able to leverage this, as well. So those are all the things that I had today, Padma. I'll see if there's any other questions.
No other questions. Thank you for the demo, and thank you for answering all our questions, Rob. Everyone, today we looked at visualizing reports using the AWS Trusted Advisor and customizing them using AWS services such as Amazon Athena, QuickSight, and Glow. If there are questions that were not answered today, please post them on forums.aws.amazon.com or email us any feedback, kc-live@amazon.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Tell us what else you would like to see on the show. Thank you for joining us today at AWS Knowledge Center Live. Happy cloud computing.
Thanks, everyone.